Hey guys, how are you? This is Ishai Breslauer, your host of the CRE SharkEye Show. Hope you guys doing well. Today it's time to talk retail. Believe it or not, we're going to talk a lot of retail today with a person who is in retail in the New York area for the past 20 years. So you have to pack up, pack up your meaning packed up experience. You guys should come out with your pens and papers and summarize whatever you can, because we have a lot of experience packed up right here in this conversation. Ryan Feldman, thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
So Ryan Feldman is, like I said, is a broker in New York. Ryan, if you could give us a 2-minute elevator pitch, give us, the ins and outs of your business. Tell us what you're all about.
Sure. So I'm a commercial real estate broker in New York Metro. I specialize, for the most part, in doing tenant representation, which means I represent national chain store tenants, whether they be corporate or franchise concepts, throughout New York Metro, meaning all 5 boroughs of New York City, Nassau County, Suffolk County, New Jersey, Rockland, Westchester, etc. So my goal is basically working with these retail tenants and identifying appropriate markets for them to expand into. And like I said, or like you said, I've been doing that for almost 20 years now. I'm getting old.
Yeah. That makes 2 of us.
Yeah.
Something, meaning the one thing I look forward to this conversation is that working with nationals is, from my perspective, is very, very exciting, because there's so many demands and they have a very professional real estate, I would say, front or management, meaning whoever's dealing with the real estate in their departments, whatever it is.
Right.
And they have the knowledge of understanding markets and understanding what they require, the KPIs and everything that we're going to dig into, which you obviously have the experience. But before we get into all that, if you could give us a little bit about yourself, how you got into real estate, what got you excited about this, and why did you choose retail?
Wow. Where do I start? So I went to law school for a year and dropped out. Yeah, I hated it and it hated me. It was a mutual dislike of each other. So after I dropped out of law school, I just had to pay back some loans. So I did some paralegaling work, which was equally awful. And then answered an ad. This is 2002 maybe, or 2003, on one of those websites. And I wish I could remember. It was like monster.com or careerbuilders.com, one of those websites. And I found a job which seemed very interesting to me. It was in retail real estate. And I had no knowledge that even existed. I always knew there were residential brokers, commercial brokers. I did not know there was a niche for retail, but it seemed interesting. I like to shop. I thought it'd be fun. I gave it a shot. I was hired by a company called Garrick Ogg, who's no longer around anymore, but they were one of the original retail brokerage companies in New York City. And they hired me to work in their outer boroughs department. So for the first couple of years that I worked there, I solely worked in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island, and say Upper Manhattan, north of 125th Street. It was a great place to learn, a great place to start. But I learned very quickly I wanted to really focus on the tenant side, representing tenants. And to do that, it's a little tricky, in my opinion, in this industry. I think you really have to work for brokers who also share in that approach, because a lot of brokers I find do like the landlord side, and there's reasons for that. But again, I really wanted to be with the tenant, identify trade areas for tenants, and grow myself and my business from there. So that's how I got all this started.
Tell me something. What got you excited? You said you wanted to get attached to the tenants.
Right.
From what perspective? Meaning, I'm going back for a second in time, into your younger self. What got you excited about this?
So it's a great question. So when I was a kid, and even still to this day, I'm very nerdy with maps. I used to, oh God, I hope nobody is gonna call me out on this one day. I literally used to draw maps when I was a kid, and I'm talking like 5, 6, 7 years old. I don't want you to think I did this in my teens. And I would draw maps and I would bring them down to the pool where we lived. We lived in a high-rise development in Jersey, and I would try to sell these maps to people. Explaining to them like, yeah, if you're going on vacation, if you're traveling one day, maybe you would want to go here. Here's a map of the area. Stupid, but I was a young kid. What did I know? Anyway, that love of maps, love of geography, always stuck with me. And to this day, I don't know if it's a loose screw in my brain or not. I can look at a map once and I literally memorize that map. This could be a subway map. It could be a map showing topography. It just sticks with me. So I think there was something in relation to maps and then in turn mapping, which is what retailers love and look for when they're growing and expanding a brand, to have an understanding or to work with a local professional who understands a trade area, understands where they need to grow, where they need to expand. And again, I think having that knowledge, or at least I had that knowledge, that love of mapping, I think took me, or it gave me a leg up. It gave me a little bit of a head start in explaining why trade areas work and why certain trade areas don't work.
So, okay, so that leads me to the next question, on your personal journey. Again, before we get into the ins and outs of the profession, creating relationships with moms and pops is one thing, and that's not what you do for the most part.
Right.
And creating relationships with the nationals is a whole different level. What is the skill that you have acquired in order to get to those big guys? And what did you find that you need to know most in order to do that?
I think a lot of it's just experience over time. I don't mean to throw cold water on anybody who's getting into this business or who's new. Far from it, but it takes a while to garner people's trust. It just does. And if somebody's going to want to work with you, and take a brand from 5 stores to 50 stores or 50 stores to 500 stores, there's a lot of time and trust that goes into that. One of the accounts I worked on early in my career was a haircutting chain out of Minneapolis called Great Clips. And they're probably somewhere now north of 3,000 or 4,000 stores. When I started working with them, they pretty much had maybe 5 stores, 7 stores, give or take, in northern Jersey, central Jersey. They had none in New York at the time. And I had pitched them. I'm going back 10 years ago. So this is, maybe even 12 years ago. This is somewhat early in my career. And I had pitched them and they said no. No, we want to work with a bigger organization. We think they could serve us better. Okay, fine. I kept pursuing them. Every couple of months, I would ping the real estate manager and say hello. And then I ran into her again at a ICSC convention in Las Vegas. Probably it was 2008, 2009. And I said, hey, remember me? I've always been bugging you. And she grabbed my arm and she said, do you want to be my broker? I said, yeah, of course. I wanted to do this forever. And, lo and behold, I worked with Great Clips for about 9 years or so. Wow. And did probably about 45 stores with them, just shy of 50. I think I got to 47 or 48 stores with them. Now, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but, a little bit of it is having experience, being able to convey your market knowledge to a real estate manager. Because you have to realize, Great Clips, they're based out of Minneapolis. I'm not going to tell you they have no clue about the New Jersey market. They have all their demographic software and they have some existing stores. So they have a clue as to what works and what doesn't work. But that's where you got to get into the weeds. And you really got to be able to explain to a client why certain markets work and why certain markets don't work. Where's the strong grocery anchored shopping center? Where are the vehicle counts over 50,000 cars per day? Where's our synergies? Where's our competitors? Where's Supercuts? Where's Fantastic Sam's, et cetera? So I think it's just a level of really market knowledge. How's that? That's probably the key word to take from that, is really having like roll your sleeves up, true and tried market knowledge. And I think people respect that. I think tenants respect that. I think if you can convey your understanding of the market, I think if you can convey certain factual information about a market, I think tenants respect that. And in turn, they're going to want to work with you.
You know what? I'd really appreciate if you could walk us through the following. You're dealing obviously with many nationals, and they have chains, franchisors, on a corporate aspect or whatever it is.
Right.
And you're dealing with them, and they're coming with all kind of demands. We want 4 entrances. We want to be, like you said, the 50,000 car count. We want to be in this type of, we want a grocery anchored or else, whatever it is. Could you give us a little bit of an overview without getting into too many details, but just, an overview, an idea of the types of, all those types of retailers and their demands and how different it is between this type of store, that type of store, and how you maneuver between them and how your service comes into play? I'd love to hear that.
It's a good question. It's a very good question, because and maybe this is a cliche answer, but yeah, each tenant is unique.
Right.
I've been doing this a long time, and I've rarely stumbled into tenants who have similar requests or requirements. Not uncommon, but very, very rare.
It's amazing.
So I would say, I would say that, having the ability to find out exactly what the tenant really is truly looking for. Now, sometimes this gets lost in the shuffle. Sometimes a tenant will just simply tell you, I need 1,000 square feet, my demographic, or my customer is a certain demographic, go. Okay. I mean, that's a little bland. That's a little too basic. Yeah. And then you're painting with a very large brush, not really going to achieve the goal at the end of the day. So I think you really need to, and a lot of this, don't get me wrong, a lot of this comes from you as a broker, not just Googling, not just looking up online on a company website. You got to go to the stores. You got to actually, get into the experience of what these companies are creating. And this could be something as simple as, I'll give you a good example. Wingstop's one of my clients. I've done work for them for the last 6 years in New York. And we're also probably pushing about 40, 45 locations with them now. When I started working with them in the market, they probably only had about 5 stores, give or take. I had never eaten the product before. I went to the store 2 or 3 times in the span of a month when I first started working. A, they're very good chicken wings. I'm not just saying that, but they are good chicken. But B, I started to see who the customer was. You start to see when these stores are busy. I remember once going at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, ghost town, dead. I went another time at 8 o'clock at night, packed. So what does that tell you as a broker? It tells you, okay, I need to focus on trade areas that are going to have some sort of nighttime activity, right? That's what the first thing that I grabbed from the Wingstop experience. So, and again, a lot of what I'm doing with Wingstop is in New York City. So Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and there's nighttime activity pretty much wherever you go. But you want to find the synergies. You want to find the other QSR guys that are open till 10 o'clock at night or till midnight, because you know that there's nighttime activity. That if a KFC is staying up until midnight, there's nighttime activity there. So why not, keep it simple, stupid, as Vince Lombardi always said. So follow the leader. Don't be, I had a great client of mine always said, I don't want to be a pioneer. Pioneers get arrows in their backs. So true. So true. And in retail real estate, more so in residential, you want to be early, right? You want to be the first one to live in a certain neighborhood. and then all the other yuppies move in, and then your price values go up, and then you look like a genius. In retail, it's the total opposite. Yeah, you don't want it. If you're the first one into a market, shame on you. Anybody who thinks they could be a pioneer in retail real estate, either they have just an amazing concept and they're going to succeed no matter where they go, or they got lucky. I'm sorry, I hate to say that, but they got lucky. For the most part, following the trends that have been set already will take you to the promised land. That's my humble.
You know something? Let's do it for a second. Let's go through the KPIs a little bit. Key performance indicators for those who don't understand what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the big guys demand. If you could, give us a little bit, bits and pieces.
I'm sorry, of the various tenants that I work with in general, or just in general?
In
general?
I would give you the
in general. Go
ahead. Yeah.
No, in general, I would tell you. Let's start with QSR, with quick service restaurants. I would tell you the number one KPI is knowing what the competitors, their competition, are doing in terms of sales volume. And that's also too, that's a broker skill that you need to hone and master.
How can you find out? You see a lot of people in a restaurant. You can't ask them for the for the revenue report. You don't know that unless they are
money, baby. You gotta subscribe to services, and you gotta. This is where becoming a broker, like you said, it's about talking with people, but you're right. You can't walk into a McDonald's and chat up the manager and expect he's going to tell you, yeah, we did $5 million in sales this year. No, right. That's never going to happen. Nor should you trust that guy, neither, because exactly. He doesn't know you from a hole in the wall. No, I utilize a lot of different services. I utilize two services who are pretty damn good at giving you accurate counts for
the data.
Annualized volume. Sorry?
The data. They have the data.
Yeah, exactly. And having that data is essential, because if you can bring in QSR, I can't speak to other brands, but in QSR more so than any other category, if you can bring a tenant to a new trade area and say that KFC is doing $2 million a year, that Popeyes is doing 2.3, that McDonald's is doing 5 million. That's really your base argument why you should be in this trade area.
It's a great indicator.
Oh, they're great indicators, and they're factual indicators. There's a lot of BS that goes on in brokerage, but when you can separate the BS and the subjectivity, I'm not saying maybe BS is the wrong word, but if you can separate the subjectivity from factual, then again you look like a rock star to your client, because you brought them market knowledge, factual market knowledge, not, oh yeah, that guy does great over there. What does that mean? Great means what? Why is a $5 million McDonald's great? Tell me why. Well, because the 8 other McDonald's in this trade area only do 3.5 million. So there's a reason why we want to be here. This is the best McDonald's for a reason. Maybe it's big vehicular counts. Maybe it's a strong subway stop or a bus stop. Maybe there's just great vertical density in a trade area. There's other facts that you have to bring to the table as well. But as far as KPIs go in the QSR industry, that's probably your number one, I would tell you.
I want to shift gears a little bit. The market of retail, and you've been, and it's great to have you because you've been there for 20 years. So you've seen the early 2000s, then hitting the 2008, which we know what happened. Going through 2008 until 2 years ago, COVID. Big. At first, before pre-COVID, Amazon, the e-commerce revolution.
Sure.
Then COVID, then where we are today. If you could give us a market overview and understanding the evolution from your perspective of how your work went through working like this to working like that to working where we are today. And I'm sure you've shifted a lot of things, and I'm very curious to hear about that.
Yeah, that's a big question. That's a time-consuming big question. Let me think my best to answer
We can make it long or short or whatever.
No, I want to, it's an important question. I want to make sure I answer it correctly. I mean, I guess we can start from the present because who cares so much about the past, right? It gets forgotten.
Present is most important, without a doubt. Then we can analyze the past a little bit. Yeah.
I would tell you, going into COVID, 2019, 2020, nothing really had changed significantly that altered my perspective, my view of the marketplace. I don't work with a lot of fashion forward type tenants. That was never really my niche. Working in the outer boroughs, you work in a lot of urban markets that just don't really play to that type of a customer base. So, the online e-commerce shopping wave never really hit the markets that I do a lot of business in. I'm sure if you do work in, trendy neighborhoods on the Upper East Side, Upper West Side, meatpacking district, Soho, wherever it may be. I mean, yeah, maybe some retailers wanted to peel back and maybe downsize store counts. I never really went through that side of the retail experience, if you will. So I can't speak to. Sorry. But I can tell you when COVID hit, and I distinctly remember driving on the Grand Central Parkway in Queens and seeing all the signs, wear your mask, protect one another, and stay indoors, don't go outside. It scared the shit out of me. I had a very horrible feeling that this whole industry was going to disappear and disappear very quickly. And what I was surprised to see, and maybe I was lucky, maybe it was just, the way I positioned myself in my business, is food and food delivery excelled dramatically during COVID. I don't know if you were here, if you weren't here in the boroughs during those first couple of months, but you would see drive-through lines at Popeyes or Wendy's or McDonald's, wherever. They could be 30, 40, 50 deep sometimes. And a lot of my retail tenants really expanded. I mean, my Taco Bell guys, my Wingstop guys, I'm just giving you two examples, but I mean, they couldn't help themselves. I mean, we were getting really, really great deals. We were negotiating like sharks. We were just ripping landlords apart during that time. And that lasted for a good, I would tell you, year and a half. And I was fortunate. The people that I worked with, the tenants that I was working with at that time, were very aggressive. And like I said, that was a good year and a half in the marketplace. Then, unfortunately, you started running into supply chain issues and labor issues, which we're still dealing with today in a horrible, sad, pathetic way. I won't digress and get into that, but it slowed people down. Some people are finding to build these stores. It's taking 6 months to a year to get a store open. And that's because you can't get a part for a compressor, or, the foam that goes into your seat cushions is on back order in China for 3 months, or you can't find labor. People just don't want to work anymore. It's ever changing in terms of how retailers need to adapt and adjust, and whether that means bringing in more technology to the restaurant because you can't find labor, so now you're going to have 3 less cashiers and maybe have kiosks. I just read the other day that Shake Shack's going to now bring in kiosks into their restaurants, and good for them, they should. So yeah, there's a lot that's going on. There's a lot that is changing. There's no two ways around that.
You know what? From perspective of, and meaning from an owner perspective, you always look for the right tenant mix. The question is, from your perspective, where you represent those guys that we spoke about, those nationals, and you come in and you say, okay, I want to find them the best place. Obviously, we spoke about some indicators that are very important, accounts, the revenues, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a place where you see that there might be a good place, might be a good area for them, but the tenant mix could be, meaning it's bad. It's not good. What is your perspective on that?
It happens frequently, more so in suburban markets than urban markets. And I think in urban markets, if you can get as close to you can as ground zero, whether that be a main intersection, a bustling subway stop, whatever it may be. If you can get close, you've accomplished your goal.
Right.
In suburbia, I find you'll run into shopping centers that they're just missing that anchor, and usually it means grocery. And I could tell you, from working with, whether it was Great Clips or whenever I do work with H&R Block, we really are only focusing on grocery anchored shopping centers. And there's a simple and obvious reason for that. I mean, they are the definition of a true daily needs tenant. Whether or not you go to the supermarket 2 days a week or 5 days a week, having a grocer anchor in your shopping center could take you from being a B center to an A center very quickly, very quickly. And I would also tell you too, I mean, I do represent a shopping center in Staten Island where we have Stop and Shop and Home Goods are the two main anchors. But a place where we've struggled, and we have a lot of QSR in the center. We have Dunkin'. We just signed a lease with Qdoba. We have a great neighborhood Chinese guy. We also just signed a lease with Paris Baguette, who's an Asian bakery chain. And we just signed, I shouldn't say just, we signed earlier in the year, Wendy's, who's going to do a ground lease and build a drive-through. But in that center, I've struggled, running it for the last 5 years to bring in soft goods, to bring in apparel, because we don't have apparel in the center. And you go to the center to the left of me, you go to the center half a mile to the left of me, they have apparel and they keep bringing in more apparel. But because we never had that from the start, to get that first tenant to be that pioneer, there's that word again. No one wants to be that pioneer who comes into our center, even though I have Stop and Shop, even though I have a Home Goods that does almost $13 million a year. They just don't see, oh, well, where's Carter's, or where's the Children's Place, or, where's, Pretty Girl or Mandy's or whatever. Pick your other soft goods apparel retailer. And that hurts sometimes, because that's definitely, again, that's a synergy that they're looking for that I just can't provide. So I would say the grocery anchor will open the doors for a lot of people. But again, certain tenants are going to want to be near other synergistic type uses.
You represent grocery anchors as well?
No, I don't. None of the big box supermarket guys. The only big box tenant I rep is AutoZone. In the outer boroughs, Nassau and Suffolk. The rest of my book is predominantly sub 5,000 square feet.
I got it. Very interesting. What is your perspective on the future of retail? When you look at retail, obviously you walk around retail all the time. What do you think is the future of retail with all the things that everybody's talking about that some people said, obviously it's not true. We know that, but people said, retail has no future, or retail will change, or even those who are more positive saying the type of retail that we have known so far is changing. The shopping mall is no longer the thing like it used to be. Right now, we're going to a different era, and there needs to be a different mix between either tenants or within the stores, more warehousing, less this, less that, less square footage. What is your perspective on that? Those conversations.
I hate it. And I'm not a person who shuns change, but to me, the experience growing up, in the 90s of going to the mall was like the wow factor.
It was the funnest thing. Yeah.
It was so much fun. And it was a gathering place. It was a place where you could meet up with friends. It was a place where you could eat, shop, see a movie, whatever it may be. And I'm sure, I have a hard time believing it. I hope it's not true, but I'm sure that some of the bigger mall owners, and I've seen them get creative. You see people who have brought in um, unique uses, let's say.
Yeah, you see the
Um,
American Dream Mall, all those guys. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and even on a lesser degree, where people have brought in more, experiential type tenants, whether it be um, somebody who might be opening up a bouncy gym within a shopping center that
Right.
brings in kids, that brings in moms and other family members. And that's great, I think. But to change some of these shopping centers and you see it and you hear about, oh, we're going to add a storage facility to the shopping center. I mean, what? Like, what does that do for that shopping center? To me, it destroys that shopping center. Or to take a Circuit City that may have closed from 5 or 6 years ago and now bring in an ambulatory service. Like, what are you doing? Like, if you're going to go in that direction, then I blow up your mall. Just turn it into houses or turn it into a hospital. I don't. But yeah, I think the future of retail, hopefully, will be a good mix of various uses that still can play to people, where it's a place you're going to want to go and gather and socialize and have fun. I don't know if having urgent care, dermatology, podiatry, and bringing that into a 100,000, 200,000 square foot shopping center achieves that. And I hope we don't go in that direction, but it's very difficult today. I mean, retailers certainly don't want to be spending money on occupancy costs where they can avoid it. And if they can avoid it by being half e-commerce, half retail, I hate to say it, but they're going to do that. And I think, unfortunately, that's leading to a shift in our industry. So time will tell, but I
Right.
hope it
Time will
doesn't
tell for
continue to
sure.
go in that direction.
But
Yeah.
on the perspective, meaning a little bit something that, meaning about what you said, you brought the example of bringing, let's say, a different type of a business into a shopping center where it used to be a shopping center. Now you bring a certain, different type of a business. Could be light industrial even, or office
Right.
or something like that. And you said, try to make it, turn into houses already. So first of all, we see it's done, but many times, due to the fact that turning it into residential requires obviously some aggressive rezoning that
Yeah.
many times the city would not let. Sometimes they will, but the process is too heavy. So I think it turns into a numbers game. Meaning, if I'm a guy and I see a shopping center that used to be real successful, but the landlord already gave up, and he sees that there's nothing going to happen there, and he
Right.
just wants to get out, and I can buy it for a certain price where I can entertain a different business for very cheap price per square footage, obviously would change the whole structure, and we'll be frustrated because it's not going to be as pretty as it used to be and fun.
Right.
But number wise, it makes sense. I can make money. So
Right.
so I think this is an answer. Just commenting what you said. I think this is something that we're seeing. It's just a shift.
It is, and I'm looking out my office window now across the river into Manhattan, and how many of these Class B and C office buildings that got decimated during COVID,
Yeah.
how many of them are going to come back and be Class B and C office buildings again?
No, for sure.
And
Especially
I
in
don't
the
know
downtown area.
yeah,
If,
I
if
mean,
they're not going to turn
I
into residential, we're in trouble.
I think, yeah, I think that might be the end game. And I don't know, again, like you said, that's going to require aggressive zoning and a lot of money. It ain't cheap to create an apartment with a kitchen and a bathroom. It's a lot cheaper to build office space.
Exactly.
So people talk about that, and whether or not it happens is, again, you hate to keep saying it, but time will tell. But those are very expensive propositions,
Right.
and
True.
it'll be curious to see where we go soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ryan, it was certainly a pleasure having you. And before we say our goodbyes, you guys can see the links above and below how you can reach out to Ryan. Ryan, tell us please how everybody can reach out to you.
Me? Phone or email is best.
Phone or email
My
is best. You guys heard it. LinkedIn also, I guess, because that's how
LinkedIn too. I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a fun platform.
So
You can
here you
make it
guys see
fun.
the link. You can reach out to Ryan. And Ryan, thank you so much for being with us. Stick around for a second. I'll say goodbye to everybody. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys learned a lot from it because I did. And what can I tell you? Ryan, thank you very much again.
My pleasure.